The deeper and deeper I go, I find what it is I should know. 'Cause it's just a matter of time that you'll reawaken your mind. Oh, come with me, come to know and find out what is true. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening minds. Come to know and find out what is truth, yes. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening minds.
Happy Holy Day, Moors. Welcome to House of Reawakening Minds. House of Reawakening Minds exists to provide for the exploration and practice of spirituality in an enlightened community dedicated to honoring the myriad of sacred pathways to the universal creator. We are a holistic center for spiritual grounding, free thought, self-discovery, and Moorish science, an awakening experience for all ages. Tonight, we are pleased to bring forth our National Grand Sheik, Taj Tarik Bey, as he presents words and phrases you need to know. But before we get started, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Now let's receive Grand Sheik Taj Tarik Bey.
Salam, assalamu alaikum, vadimakum. We're going to go over a few words and phrases. So everyone get out your, as usual, get out your pens and papers and take notes. This is basically old stuff, old lessons that most of you who have been studying over the years, and many of you who are quote unquote cognate of the difference between the dead or corporate operations of the popes of Rome and the bishopric of Rome, distinguished from the living, breathing, sentient man and woman, and the conflicts that have arisen due to the Spanish Inquisition against the Moors by the Pope, Roman Catholic Church, and the Pope and the popes and the bishopric of Rome, which is at the basis of almost all your modern wars on the planet. And relative to the political operations, particularly here at North America and exported around the world after colonization of the North Gate of the Maghreb of North, Central, South America, etc. And due to the omission of certain pertinent information to the people in general, and as many of you already know, due to the actual fact that most of the people have been subjected to mind control, psychic attacks, and animal husbandry disguised as education, many of us have been handicapped in many areas relative to government, self-government, right of self-government, rights, liberties, hereditaments, etc., and the like. And so while this is all familiar information to many of you who have been studying for years, because of the fact that many people around Midgard are beginning to wake up to much of the corruption that has been instituted in most circles of government, etc., I find it useful to share some of these words and phrases, all of which we can't go through because of a time constraint. However, we'll pick out certain words and phrases and present them to you again, as we've done over the last couple of decades, etc., in that it can bring up to snuff many of the people who have been left behind relative to the actual operations of government, particularly relative to law and sovereignty, which has been pretty much denied to the people in general, etc. to the point that many people have been deceived into thinking that it has nothing to do with them due to a lack of knowing or lack of interest on their part, which has much to do with training more than actual reality. So we're going to go through some of the words and phrases and make note of them to change or to accentuate the state of mind or the states of mind of our people in relationship to the important elemental political etymon construct issues involving the etymon applications and the usage and usages of certain words and phrases as deemed for social engineering. And so we'll go into some of this and trust that we will spark some conversations with you among yourselves. Because some things we, again, like I say, some things we can't go all the way into detail due to constriction of time. But by sharing some of this with you, it should stir you and stimulate your interest in these matters that absolutely involve every phase of your life in society. Now, as was spoken of earlier and in other treatises and sessions, we shall emphasize the importance of one having at least a basic knowledge of the linguistic root nature of and about etymology. Now, one must not ever forget that while social and civilization institutions are a natural evolutionary part of human social societies, one must also keep in mind that corrupt governments tend to corrupt institutions for the sake of protecting the foul and corrupt politicians and their contracted minions from the general populace and or the targeted natural beings deemed for pillage, peonage, misrepresentations, trafficking, miseducation, and extortion, etc. In the interest of diligence for the learned and for reminding, and or informing the less knowing and less diligent among us, we will quickly recall the meaning of etymology and of the etymon and about semantic deceit, quote unquote, as used for and by de facto governing bodies and for foreign occupational government administrators. Now, let us note some words and phrases often deceptively used in society for establishing or maintaining de facto operations and for veiling corrupt governance. The list of words and phrases presented here in this treatise does not always mean that the meanings, usages, and placements of them are always negative. Does not mean they're always negative. Many words and phrases are lent to the positive, yet the deliberate omissions made of some of them in specific instances may have injurious consequences. And such instances are not always accidental or by oversight. And the deceitful misplacements of words and phrases and some noted semantic deceits or deceit applications of the same as applied in specific circumstances are to be taken into consideration. However, one must look into the social, economic, and the political status positions of the natural beings in question, particularly the clarification of quote unquote person being the living, divine, breathing being as distinguished from the corporate fiction entity that is of primal concern. Those matters are of primal concern. So logically, issues about jurisdiction, about hereditaments, about rights, liberties, property, and the like are always pertinent. The following are some of the important words and phrases to know about and to consider at all times. And particularly when dealing with anyone who claims to have or to possess governmentally delegated authority. Now, there are no exclusions, none. Remember this: the law of nature is superior to any other laws, and it is binding in all countries at all times. Keep that in mind. And anything to the contrary, in law, in government, notwithstanding. So I'm going to give you a list of some words. Many of you, again, those of you who are studied, of course, this is redundant to many of you, but because so many more people are waking up around the country, around our land, around the continent, and around the world, because for the most part, we've all been bitten by the same rabid dog of politics. And that's a fact. So a list of words and phrases for study. 1, person. Write this down. Some of these things we will note on tonight, but much of this you will do research on your own, and it's best to study with others who are studying also, so that you can sharpen swords with each other and also become more competent in your comprehension and understanding of what words are, also what they actually mean in their truth, in their veracity, in their history, in their origin, and in their morphology, etc. So 1, person. 2, land. 3, hereditament. Hereditament. And of course, that deals with corporal and incorporeal. Hereditament, corporal, and incorporeal. 4, free white persons. Free white persons. 5, arbitrary. Arbitrary. 6, prize courts. Prize courts. 7, ordinances. Ordinances. 8, treaties of peace. Treaties of peace. 9, intercourse of nations. Intercourse of nations. 10, primary. Primary. 11, secondary. Secondary. 12, alliance. Alliance. 13, commerce. Commerce. 14, colored. Colored. 15, colored person. Colored person. 16, color of law. Color of law. 17, color of authority. Color of authority. 18, color of office. Color of office. 19, Law of nature. Law of nature. 20. Natural justice. Natural justice. 21. Jus gentium. Jus gentium. That's Jus, capital Gentium. Jus gentium. Next word, phrase, in propria persona. In propria persona. Next word, minority. Minority. Next word, wardship. Wardship. That's WARDSHIP. Next phrase, parens patriae. That's PARENS, capital PATRIAE. Parens patriae. Next word, surety. Surety. Next word, trespass. Trespass. Next word, perfidy. Perfidy. That's PERFIDY. Next word, performance. Performance. Next word, hell. Hell. Next word, exchequer. That's EXCHEQUER. Exchequer. Next word, conversion. Conversion. Next word, reversion. Reversion. Next phrase, reversion of estate. Reversion of estate. Next phrase, stare decisis. Stare decisis. STAREDECISIS. Stare decisis. Next word, symboliography. Symboliography. That's SYMBOLAEOGRAPHY. Symboliography. Next word, status. Status. Next word, estate. Estate. Next phrase, corpus delicti. Corpus delicti. That's CORPUSDELICTI. Corpus delicti. Next word, semantics. 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 TICS. Semantics. Next word. Allodial. 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 Next word. Allonge. Allonge. That's ALLONGE. Allonge. Next word. Noble. Noble. Next word. Mortgage. Mortgage. Next word. Divine. Divine. Next word. De facto. DE space FACTO. De facto. Next word. De jure. De jure. DE space JURE. De jure. Next word. Treaty. Treaty. Next word. Constitution. Constitution. Next word. Principle. Principle. Next word. Agent. Agent. Now we have other words, but these, if you get grounded in many of these, comprehend that one of the reasons we're sharing this is because in the near future, many of these things will come more to the surface for you to be talking about in the social and political platforms and paradigms that you're meeting now and will be meeting in the very near future. And so you need to be up on some of these things because people who should have told you much of this have taken the position that you should not know about these things. We already know that. And so, yet all these things have been affecting your lives every day, even if you haven't been told about it, and even if you haven't been interested. However, things that are coming about now and in the near future to face all of us actually, are important for you to be up on some of these things because they're going to affect your lives, and you'll be better served being aware of them when you hear them, or when you notice that when you do some research, some of these words and phrases are conveniently absent or conveniently misrepresented to you when you discover some of this stuff. However, it's operative in your everyday affairs. And for those of you who have not been familiar with some of these words and phrases, know that just because you haven't been familiar with them does not mean they have not been operative in your everyday lives, because they absolutely have. And then a lot of things that we've talked about over the years, I think a lot of times many of the questions that arise among the people are because they're not aware of some of these words and phrases, or when they hear them, they go past them because they're not familiar, and therefore they don't comprehend the messages or the information that's being presented to aid in the uplifting of fallen humanity, particularly in relationship to the fact that we've been under diabolical and demonic governmental operations for generations, and most of the people have not known it. And because most of the people have not been aware that the people who they've deemed as their government were in fact not their government, and had never intended to actually give or to execute what is known as government services to the people, but have in fact been systematically raping and pillaging the people, and also genociding the people, and also poisoning the people, making the people sick, and then blackmailing the people with pharmaceuticals, etc., and with military operations under the guise of nation and country. And in fact, all your wars have been executed by criminals who you thought was government, and assisted by people among your own who you thought were convenient helpers in the society. Though lesser degree, as far as operational administration, they were assisting the criminal operations of de facto government knowingly for generations, and they've been undetected because you didn't know how to vet them or to measure them. And this is another reason why we're sharing this information, because due to the fact that many people around the world are awakening now, it has created a little bit of unrest among de facto government operatives and people among yourselves who up to this point have been well insulated among you and that you've trusted, but you didn't know that they were actually agents for the popes of Rome to some degree. And this has nothing to do with the fact that they've called themselves your friends or civil leaders or religious leaders, etc. As a matter of fact, most of the people that have caused injury in your society successfully on behalf of Rome has been because you have trusted these people, and they have won your trust with misconceptions, semantic deceit, also removing certain information from many documentations, and particularly and deliberately not teaching etymology, not teaching the etymon principles, which should have been taught at a second and third grade level in any proper schooling system, and specifically civics, etc. And of course, by virtue of them adjusting artificially the chronology operations at Midgard, i.e., they've tampered with all the calendars, etc., to actually set the people off cycle, and altered or reconstructed history, deleted much of the foundation of law and jurisprudence, and totally corrupted the principles of jurisdiction, etc., and hidden the obligations and duties of government, quote unquote, officials, etc., and the conditions by which any such persons should hold office, etc., and the limitations or the limited delegated authority to anyone in any body politic that is known as government. And the very fact that they also don't teach divine law and natural law, which is superior to all other laws, and international law is based in natural law. They're associated as the same. And so when you hear the phrase international law, you understand that you're talking natural law. And no law, no legislation of any type supersedes or is at any time superior to natural law. And now many of you have heard that phrase, but you haven't been told by people who are in so-called government, or people who are so-called community leaders, as they sometimes are phrased as being, whether they call them civil rights leaders or marchers and prayers and